Yes, hello everybody and welcome back to the Celtic Unrestricted View podcast. My name is Ryan Clifford and joining me this guest episode is JP. Well, JP, very good guest today, I would say, mate, in terms of Celtic. Obviously, it's Jonathan Burns, son of ex-Celtic legend Tommy Burns. Jonathan, I'm really glad to have you on, mate. I know I spoke to you before a while ago and really good feedback, mate. So I did think it was very good to get you back on, mate, and hear how things are and obviously how Celtic are your opinion of Celtic, mate? But I'm really glad to have you on, mate. Hope you're okay.
Yeah, no, pleasure, mate. Thanks very much for the invite to come back on. Delighted.
I say, JP, obviously, a lot of good stories for Jonathan for the last time, so I'm looking forward to hearing some stories this time, and obviously on Celtic and his life abroad, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to hearing what he's got in store for us today. I'll let you take the floor, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, I mean, as we were speaking about just a little bit earlier before we came on live, I was in Florida there for probably about 6.5 years. So I just recently moved up to Charlotte to work for Charlotte Independence, which some people might remember Jim McGuinness, who was at Celtic. Jim McGuinness was the first team manager at Charlotte Independence, I think probably maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think Jim's back in Ireland now, but I basically worked with the 19s group up here, and I also work with the 14s group up here as well. So it's been good. It's been a change, obviously, because the lads that I'm working with just now are in the Pro Academy programme of the club. So that's the kind of, if you like, the direct feeder that would be going kind of hopefully to the first team eventually. So it's a little bit different to what my role was in Florida, but I've been really enjoying it.
I think obviously, Jonathan, see coaching abroad, you've been over there for a while now. Would you recommend that as a young coach, aspiring coach, to try and, because obviously a lot of coaches in Scotland don't get a big opportunity because obviously to get to the top, i.e. Celtic, Rangers, etc., you need to be really, really good. Do you think to enhance your career, maybe get a start, you're maybe better going abroad to get more experience and then maybe go to a bigger club?
I would say as much experience as you can get, stands you in really good stead. I think in football back home, it's very difficult because there's not a lot of full-time roles in Scottish football as a whole. So, you need a hell of a lot of luck. You need, the right people who like you. You need an opportunity, and then once you get the opportunity, you need to do really well. So it's difficult. For me, I think that it was great. I was very, very lucky to kind of get the opportunity to come to America and then from there be able to kind of develop and kind of want to kind of carve out a pathway for myself of what I wanted my own kind of coaching career to look like. But I think you're dead on, mate. I think it's easy for me to say, get to America. The hard part is getting to America. I think a lot of the boys that I know went the college route, so they played in college. And then from playing in college, they were able to extend visas into maybe graduate assistant at the university level and things like that. And from there, they just, they managed to kind of work out a way to stay. So that's probably the advice I would give to anybody that was really looking to kind of come stateside, would be the earlier you do it, the better. I mean, I was lucky that I had people that could write references and things like that. So I was able to kind of get through the visa process but, for people that have a genuine interest in maybe coming here and trying to live or trying to make a career out of it, then if you do get in at that college age, that's a really, really good start for you.
And see, when you're obviously over in America now, Jonathan, are they quite big on, like, not just the soccer side of it, but are they quite big on the educational side of it to run alongside your soccer as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of perk of it, isn't it? Because obviously, way back when you signed a schoolboy form, it was like, well, you have to leave school. And, I think now football back home has came a long way, you know, with the performance skills and things like that. And I think there is a more of a focus on the education side, which is absolutely right, because a majority of these players are not going to become professional footballers. So in America, it's the common pathway would be you would go to college. If you're very, very good, you can leave college and enroll yourself in the MLS draft, where you can be drafted by a professional organisation, which does happen. But a majority of guys would stay for their 4 years in college, get their degree, and then at that point, it's not uncommon for these lads to then go at that point and join the MLS, even at 21, 22.
See, in terms of obviously that side of Jonathan, do you think maybe a lot of guys, maybe like you say, they do their college, they go do their 4 years, get a bit of experience playing and educational, but do you think for some of them to actually make as a footballer, they're better looking abroad, i.e. Scotland, low leagues in England? Do you think that's maybe a place to look, or do they believe they're good enough to make it in MLS?
Well, I think if you look at it now, and even you look at America's squad, you know, it's you only need to look at, you know, where the players are playing. There's a lot of kind of Bundesliga. There's a couple of lads in the Premiership. You know, of course, you've got lads that play in the MLS as well, and the MLS the standard is always improving, because look, they have a country of 350 million people, so you know the laws of averages is they're going to have top players. So I think if you look at it, the players that want to go pro would want to play at the highest level. I think that's what any professional would want, you know, to play at the highest level they possibly could. For some players that will be the MLS, but for some players like a Pulisic or you know Reina, you know, they're in top Bundesliga and top Premier League clubs. So I think it's different strokes for different folks, but you know, I think for a majority of players that want to play professional, they would be absolutely wanting to go and play at the highest level possible.
You see, like obviously the standards, obviously mentioned it is getting better. From obviously when we first about the MLS, we heard about it. Obviously, you guys like Beckham going, etc. Gareth Bale is over there now, etc. Do you think the standard is getting to a stage where people are actually coming? Not, I know there was a lot of things in the past. It was about maybe more money and publicity, but do you think now it is more actually they want to go and play in that league now because it is getting to a better standard?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lifestyle part of it as well, you know. So I think as well, a big thing like Gareth Bale going to LA and things like that. I don't think Gareth Bale grew up in Wales dreaming of playing for, you know, LAFC, but I think there's a piece of it where they look at the lifestyle of LA or Miami or whatever the case may be, and that interests a lot of players. The standard is getting better. I think the biggest thing that I would say here is the logistical piece. It's hard to fathom how big America is, you know, and it's even with the likes of this weekend, we take an under-19 group, we're playing in Tampa, you know, we're flying everybody down. I mean, you wouldn't get that growing up in Scotland. You know, how many boys club teams would go and fly, you know, 3 hours to go and play a game and fly back a couple of days later? It's just a different world in terms of that, you know. And I'm not saying that the travel side of it's an upside. It's not. It's probably a hindrance to the American game, to be honest with you. But they just kind of have a way of getting on with it, you know. That
is true, JP. And I don't think you would see like young guys at Celtic flying up to Aberdeen and stuff like that. It just wouldn't happen.
No, I don't think so. It would just be. It wouldn't look right. It probably wouldn't feel right either. But obviously, as Jonathan says, America is it's a massive country. Do you know what I mean? A population of 350 million people is quite a lot, and that you're not just going to jump on your mountain bike and you're going to be there. Do you know what I mean? It's going to take a wee bit of time and a bit of preparation prior to whatever game you've got the next game. Because I'd imagine, is that, like, Jonathan, is that most places in the MLS? Are they all flying to one another then? Is it quite a good distance between them all, or is it?
Yeah, so what will happen is it's the country's basically split into regions.
Right.
And effectively you'll play the team that's in your conference. So an example would be Nashville will be in a conference with Atlanta, Orlando City, Miami, and the New York clubs.
Ah, right.
So
okay.
they'll split it so that those kind of East Coast teams play each other, and then the exact same thing will happen on the West Coast. So all the LA teams will play each other, probably, Colorado Rapids, Salt Lake City, all those things. So they split it to try and alleviate some of that, but to be honest with you, Miami to New York is still a 4-hour flight, or a 4.5-hour flight.
Yeah.
So it's no close. I mean, if you left Glasgow and flew 4.5 hours, you'd be in Tenerife. So that's probably a good gauge of what it's like, in terms of going to play a league game.
That's quite phenomenal, considering what you just said there, Ryan. I mean, like, we fly up to Aberdeen or up to Dingwall, or you wouldn't see us doing anything like that. Do you know what I mean? And it's just that to me just sounds totally madness. But obviously, you can see that because it's America. But like Jonathan says, even in England, like, you wouldn't get teams flying from Manchester down to London or vice versa. That's how they all travel by bus. But no, but obviously the standard over there, Jonathan, as you said earlier, there has got better, because not just over the last couple of years, but I mean, years gone past, you had Ibrahimovic over there. The boy Carlos Vela, he from Arsenal was over there. You had obviously Steven Gerrard, himself was over there. Lampard was over there as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think what you're kind of getting is I think America used to be a place where players would come to retire.
Yeah.
So you look at guys like Gerrard and stuff like that, Beckham to an extent. Beckham obviously went on from LA Galaxy, but I think now what you're starting to get is you're starting to get the top talents that are in America staying in America.
Yeah.
It's an interesting formula of how they work it, because when you sign for a club, you're not actually signing for the club like you would in Europe. You're actually signing for the league. So basically what will happen is the MLS basically own your rights as a player at that point. And that's how you kind of get to the whole, you're probably familiar with in American sports that players get traded. I think that film Moneyball with Brad Pitt, you see it quite a bit where players get traded. It's the same in football. And that's effectively how they do it, because the MLS owns the rights. So it's basically just clubs kind of trading with each other. That as well, what I also like is the draft process is interesting, because if you finish last in the league, you get the first choice in the draft. So that's quite that's quite interesting in terms of a competitive outlook. If you're, say you have an absolute nightmare, you finish bottom of the league, you then get the pick of the best player coming out of college in the country. That player could potentially score 35 goals for you. So it's interesting, because the way they work it, they do always try and keep it competitive. I think the thing that I hate about it is there's no relegation promotion. You know what I mean? So I think that if there's one criticism, it would be that, there's no actual kind of consequence for failure, if you like. The flip side of that is the draft process. Yeah, it keeps the league interesting. Anybody can beat anybody, and that's great. But it's so different to the game back home. You could speak for hours on, how that actually works and what you have to do and all the kind of rules that come with it. But it's it does. It does make for a good watch. I will tell you that, because it does make for a league where anybody can beat MD. You know.
Mm-hmm.
See, as you said there, Jonathan, like the team that finishes bottom gets first pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
See the boys that are community college or university or whatever it may be in education wise, and they are really good players. Would they not be sort of put off by the team potentially coming in for them was the team that finished bottom in that table that season? Or does that not even come into play there?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, but you don't get a choice. You know, and that's not just football. That's the same for American football or basketball or whatever the case may be. If you're drafted, you don't get a pick of pick where you want to go, because then who would go and play in Green Bay or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? So basically, what happens is it goes to the draft, and then it's the teams that decide who they draft, and the players have to go. So if that's Colorado, it's Colorado, and if it's New York, it's New York.
Because it's like you said about the competitive action. That's quite interesting, Jonathan, because obviously in Scotland now they've changed it for the pyramid system, so they get the Lowland League and all that and stuff like that now. So they didn't have the relegation a long time ago in like the third division, so teams like East Stirling, Albion Rovers, they might finish bottom, and it was just same again next year, same again. But now they've obviously got a bit of competitive action with teams that want to finish bottom in the third division, because they then go down to the Lowland League or the Highland League, etc. So I can agree with that as well, JP, in terms of maybe how some players might not want to go because it's not really competitive in that sense. But like Jonathan says, every team can beat every team, so that is a competitive action in itself.
Yeah, but obviously it must give, throughout a bit of time and a bit of development, that's how it's going to go to that point of teams beating, one another, because eventually, you'll go into whoever starts, just say you're starting off in there, you're going to be not as good for the first wee while, and then obviously through time you're obviously going to get better. But then obviously, over in America, Jonathan, you guys have managed to attract really good coaches over there as well. It's not just the fact that, the players side of it, is it? It's like you have managed to get good coaching and good ideas and stuff like that. Managed to get
it's I mean, listen, the facilities are world class. I would say that if you're looking at clubs, for example, if you're looking at a club like Atlanta United would probably have one of the best training grounds in the English Premier League, never mind the Scottish. So it's, in terms of what they're doing, they're sinking a lot of money into the facilities, and with that comes a degree of professionalism with everything around it, whether it be coaching, whether it be the youth setups, whatever the case may be. It's getting better all the time, and it's evolving all the time. I don't think the model's perfect, but like I say, if somebody was to ask me, well, how would you improve the model? I honestly don't know, because logistically, the country is just so big that there's always going to be a downside. But what I would say is there's absolutely no drop off whatsoever between what players are getting in Europe and what players are getting in America in terms of facilities and what's available to them, because those clubs that are operating as MLS clubs, which I think there's 28 of them, they're owned by billionaires that probably also have a hockey team or a basketball team or an American football team. So there's incredible wealth in the game. And like I say, I think if you look at the coaches and stuff like that have worked in MLS level or even USL level as well, with the likes of Jim McGuinness and stuff like that, it's guys that have great reputations in the game, have had great careers, and like I say, mate, there's no many people that if they got offered the chance to coach an MLS club, you'd turn it down, because I think it's potentially life-changing in terms of your family and things like that as well, and the life that you're kind of potentially giving them.
Yeah, and obviously we've just recently saw that, over the last year, that Ronnie Delia came over and done quite well. He was quite successful in his spell. Him and Efrain Suarez, obviously they two were the coaches at New York. Was it New York, was it?
NYCFC, yeah. So
NYCFC,
it's interesting. So that's obviously part of the City Group, NYCFC. So, you know, I think Ronnie Delia is quite well thought of in those circles, right, at the City Group, and I think that he's back home now, isn't he? I think he went back home, but yeah, I think they won the MLS Cup and stuff like that. And again, look, that's a really kind of good example of a guy who's obviously a very good manager in terms of the jobs that he's got, and he's then came over here, won the MLS Cup, and then he goes back over at one of the top jobs in his home league, you know. So that's obviously opened doors for him. But again, it's as you can imagine with anything to do with the City Group, it's incredible in terms of their training ground, and you know, their staff are very, very good there as well, you know.
Because obviously Ronnie Delia was at Celtic. I kind of thought it was maybe in terms of it was maybe the wrong guy, the right guy at the wrong time. Obviously circumstance at Celtic at the time, Rangers weren't in the league from estate, and I think it was just win the league. No really, it didn't seem that they were really born about Europe. It was more just being top of Rangers and win the league, and obviously Rodgers stepped in. But obviously Rodgers as well spoke with Delia, set the kind of background for him coming in and the things he changed behind the scenes. So it's no a surprise, Jonathan, that he did do well in terms of obviously with the facilities there and the type of football he wants to put across. There's no surprise that he did actually be successful in America.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, you know, Ronnie Delia was at Celtic at a time where it was difficult. It was difficult probably financially because with with Rangers not being in the league, there was a huge probably financial disparity, you know, and I think we all remember the kind of days where, you know, parts of the top tier were closed and things like that, and you know, that obviously has a knock-on effect. So the thing that Ange has kind of came in and done himself, but also the kind of post-Lennon era as well, is the club's modernised. Even the last kind of 2 years, the club is modernised, and you can see that even with the structure of the B team and stuff like that. And the knock-on effect of that is that you'll get better players. You know, you'll hopefully have better players in the next 3 or 4 years that are being, you know, developed in our own academy and stepping up more frequently than what's maybe been the past. Albeit, again, the academy's done a phenomenal job. If you look at the amount of players that have actually came through and played for Celtic, but even then got careers out of the game. You know, Celtic has a kind of really good track record of that. So I think that there's no doubt that Delia was a top manager. I just think that Celtic was probably a tougher place to work during that era because, you know, like I say, you're going to win the league. You know, you're going to win the league. You know that. So then you don't have to kind of overspend, and then you're kind of bringing in guys that are 35, 36, 37 that have no sell-on value, and it's just, you know, it's just all kind of changed for the better for Celtic over the last kind of 2 years, you know.
And not only that, Jonathan, as well, he was with us for the 2 years. People that say he was unsuccessful, in my opinion, that's just nonsense, because he won 3 trophies over the 2 years, and people could say he was more or less robbed out of a treble in his first season with the game against Inverness at Hampden, the handball that was seen all around the world, apart from the 17 officials that were actually at the game.
Yeah. And I see the shocking thing is they'd probably still get away with that now with VAR. I think you're spot on. I think that when you look at it, there's no doubt that he's a top manager. I just think that with the likes of, you know, with the likes of Celtic, it's unbelievable. Like people say that, you know, Ange has changed the club. It's actually unbelievable what he's done in that space of time, because you know, he's kind of went in and single-handedly, you know, dragged the. I mean, he didn't take any staff with him, which I was always, you know, I was always one that I think, God, if you were a manager, you would really, really want your own staff, you know.
Yeah.
But I think even then he's went in, he's worked with the guys, and John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan, those guys are obviously world class. There's no doubt about that. So that's no saying that, you know, these guys can't coach, because they're probably guys that will go on and be managers in their own right somewhere in the not too distant future. But you know, even then, he's got to go in and have coaches immediately understand and be able to implement what his philosophy and style of play is as well. You know, and if you look at guys like John Kennedy, his exposure's been amazing, right? So you look at Ronnie Dahlia, Brendan Rodgers, Neil Lennon, but very different styles in their own right. So to go in and not only develop the players, you know, modernise the club, but also immediately have the staff having that understanding to be able to implement what he wants is incredible. And you know, like I say, you can only really see Celtic in an upward trajectory now, to be honest, for as long as he's there, at least.
I agree, Jonathan. I do believe that Celtic have got, again, it's just my opinion, but I'm close to saying I would probably say he's an elite manager, in my opinion, for what he's come in and done. And like he says, I'm sure he's roughly was part of that executive group as well with Yokohama, is that right as well?
Yeah, that's right.
So obviously, for what I see anyway, I don't think they would have guys in their group or associated with them if they didn't feel they were up to top class jobs or good coaches, etc. So, and I totally agree with you. Again, I know I'm not really about to talk about Guardiola or Klopp, etc., but I couldn't think of any other manager that could come in at a time. I know with Eddie Howe, for me, I've watched his recent podcast, Jonathan, and I thought he was brilliant. I was a big fan of him coming in. I thought he'd have probably no done the same job as Ange, but he's definitely built success, in my opinion, back at Celtic. But the job that he's done, I don't know off the top of my head, Jonathan, I'd probably need to do a lot of research. A manager that could come in and do the same job with the money that he had at disposal, the players that didn't want to be there, the players that were left, some, again, I'm not want to say they're rotten, but some just want the Celtic quality, and he's had to obviously let them out loan or sell them, and the turnaround in players and the money and just everything. I still don't think in the Scottish media, Jonathan, he gets enough credit, because for what he's done is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, listen, he came in at a very, very difficult time in Celtic's recent history, because, you know, the 10 meant so much, and then, to be honest with you, it just fizzled out so early, didn't it? It just didn't work for Neil Lennon, and which was a shame, you know, because Neil Lennon gave so much to Celtic, and it all turned a little bit sour, and, you know, it's very much a kind of what have you done for me lately business, you know what I mean? So if you're not winning games, I think every manager understands that, you know, the combination of that will be that you'll likely lose your job. But when you came in, you know, you've kind of, it's difficult to comprehend that, you know, you're able to bring in players, but Celtic's recruitment has been, I know a lot of people think that over the kind of last 10 years it's been poor. Actually, from a business point of view, I think Celtic's recruitment's been very, very good. I think Celtic have a clear kind of, we don't want to sign players over, you know, 24 years of age, you know, because we want to have that sell-on value. They all fit a certain criteria, you know. It's kind of the modern structure now with recruitment, is that you've got to get players on that you can sell, and Celtic are very much that type of club. And I think if you look at the players that Ange has brought in, Abada will likely go, you know, for decent money, because as much as at times, you know, he still shows that little bit of, you know, immaturity that young players have. He's clearly got a goal in him. You know, he can clearly create. He's kind of like an old-fashioned winger where he'll look to get to the byline and create things for you in that final third. So I think with Celtic and Ange, like, they've obviously got a very, very good knowledge of markets that a lot of clubs don't. And if they can even get 50% of those players being a success in terms of sell-on value, it's just, I think that Celtic are going to be very difficult to stop from a financial point of view, you know.
I think that's the most important part of it, Jonathan, as well. I think the fact that we've got a manager now who is so proactive in everything he does, the way his work ethic, everything he puts into the club. He's always a step ahead, or maybe even 2 steps ahead of everybody else, as you said there. It was just, I don't know if you've seen it yourself, just a short time ago, about a fortnight ago, he mentions at the AGM, when a guy asks him about, you know, the club's transfer business in January, what we're looking for, blah, blah, blah. And he says to the guy, January's done. He says, we've done January. He says, I might use the World Cup to do the summer. And the guy was just like, what? As if you're joking. And basically that, because we're kind of used to deadline day signings over the last, the way things have worked over the last maybe, I would say 7-8 years, even under Rodgers, because you looked at it, the last transfer windows, guys like Jeremy Toljan and Ollie Buck, Timothy Weir. I mean, guys like, we let go Eric Sviatchenko and brought in Jack Kendry and Marvin Comper to replace him. Yeah. You cannot. No one, you're laughing now, because you can't do that. You can't take gambles with things like that when you're bringing out a guy that's played in Europe for you. He's done really well. He's scored good goals, and he was playing well in the team. And then all of a sudden, you bring in 2 guys, and I'm not being disrespectful. One probably was like Scarlett Pimpernel. You never seen him at all. Yep. You'd be lucky if he was at training. And the other one would be lucky to get a game of 5 a size with you. So, yep. I just think having a manager so proactive like that now has been really, really important for us.
Yeah. I think you need to get your business done early, because I think January window in particular is very, very difficult to bring in players, because every club has every other club over a barrel. You know, everybody knows that if you're having a shocker in terms of defensively, well, the chances are that club are going to be looking for a centre-back, or they're going to be looking for somebody to come in. So therefore, any club that's approached about a player, all of a sudden the price gets bumped up because, well, they need them. So if they need them bad enough, they'll pay it. So I think there is a downside to the January market, especially in Europe, because it's just very, very difficult, and everybody doesn't need to sell. You know, I think you see the problem across the city just now with a lot of lads that are in their last 6 months. So now it becomes like almost like a fire sale in January where you need to get rid of them because they're not going to sign new deals, and that's a different scenario. But as I say, it'll be interesting to see where these players are coming from in January that they have identified, because the chances are, it wouldn't surprise me if they're kind of from that Asian market, whether it's Japan or whatever the case may be. And again, it helps to have a manager and a head of recruitment in Mark Lawwell that have very good knowledge of markets that a lot of clubs would not have knowledge of, because I think that you're then in the market for a lot of players that are available that, you know, teams probably wouldn't even think of.
I'm like you in terms of guys like Abada, Jonathan. I think if Abada gets a bit of honest with his game in terms of maybe his delivery and positional sense, defending, I think going forward, his stats tell he's brilliant for his age. He's always got a knack of getting in positions, and for me, the guy it's obviously who I think's the main man. I know you've got Kyogo, but for me, it's Jota, Jonathan. I think he's really, really good. I would never say anybody's bigger than Celtic, but I think he's one of the guys that could easily take a step up. I'm not saying where he would go, but I think in terms of maybe a different level of football, I think Jota is definitely somebody that potentially could go far in the game.
You try to sell him, Ryan, aye?
You got cut in that, Ryan?
I think he knows his agent, Jonathan.
I think so.
I asked him to say that. I'm quite well on the Mendes, by the way.
I think you're spot on. Listen, he's obviously a top player. Again, he fits that model, isn't he? What is he? He's 21, 22, something like that. So he's got that thing as well, where clubs are looking at him and saying, right, well, his best years are probably ahead of him. So again, it fits the model for Celtic, where you spend whatever you spend on him, whether that's 4, 5, 6 million, whatever the case may be, but you're going to sell him for probably 18, 19 million. That's good business, and that's what Celtic need to do consistently to be able to hopefully get to that point where they can compete a little bit more in European competition. I think that Abada is one of those ones where Celtic fans can be hard to please at times, particularly for kind of players that are maybe somewhat inconsistent. I look at it and I always think that James Forrest is one that's strange, because I think a lot of Celtic fans maybe for whatever reason have taken a disliking to James Forrest, and James Forrest will probably retire from Celtic being one of, if not Celtic's most successful player ever. And he's a guy that scored massive goals consistently. Okay, under Ange, he maybe doesn't fit that game model or whatever the case may be, but it's just strange. It's strange how certain guys get taken to like that, and certain guys for whatever reason don't. But I think as well, just going back to what we were kind of saying on, players that have that rawness, I think even if you look at, players that are like Hatate is obviously top draw for me. I think Hatate is one that could go. I think any team would look at Hatate and think, God, absolutely. He's absolutely one that we would go and he would enhance us and probably play right away. But then you look at Maeda, who, for me, there's no question he could run. He could run 24 hours of the day, I'm sure, if you would ask him. But there's maybe a tiny bit of kind of lack of quality when he's in and around the box to kind of go and provide that finish. But again, is there massive sell-on value with Maeda? Maybe not. Maybe he was one that just was kind of right off the bat, we need him because he's going to be important to the way Celtic play now. So I think obviously there's got to be a bit of that as well, and I think Ange has handled that. Has handled that unbelievably well, to be honest with you, because he's, Celtic has came in and they've played, whether they're playing Inverness or whether they're playing Real Madrid, Celtic play, and that is hugely impressive from like a coaching point of view, because it'd be easy to abandon what you're doing when you're playing Real Madrid because you're thinking, God, it'd be great to get 0-0 here, So I mean, as I say, there's certainly everything you look at with Celtic just now is hugely impressive. They're definitely, considering where they were 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, the turnaround has been absolutely unbelievable. Yeah,
just on obviously the individual players that Celtic do have now at the disposal, we obviously feel O'Reilly's quite a big player for us as well and quite important in the team. Especially now that Callum McGregor's had an injury, he's kind of had to learn to play in the pivot sort of in that sort of six. He's actually a better tackler, Jonathan, than I thought he was. He's quite a tall boy as well. So I actually thought he was a better, because when he came in, he was a kind of very similar to Tom Rogic. He liked to kind of play make in a number 10 position, sort of maybe a 7.5 to a 10, floating to help McGregor get on the ball and create for us. But when, like say, Callum being injured there and he drops into the six, I really don't see, I really cannot see a big difference between the tempo of the team with Callum in the team to the tempo in the team with O'Reilly. And I think that's credit to Matt himself for having to go and learn that new role. So there'll be teams, I think he's one of the ones as well, and there'll be teams looking at him and saying, hey, hold on a minute, that boy's had to go and learn more or less a new position that he wasn't used to being playing before, frequently. And he's done it to the best of his ability and stood out. I mean, he get the Champions League man in a match against Leipzig at Celtic Park, and we get beat.
Yep.
And then he got the Champions League man in a match again against Shakhtar at Celtic Park, playing in a new position. So that tells you as well he's come on leaps and bounds. And then obviously you've got Cameron Carter-Vickers there as well. And in my opinion, he's been the best signing I think we've had since probably Big Van Dijk. That's the kind of impact he's having in there. I don't know what it's like over in the States, Jonathan. Is there a lot of people over there ranting even about that? Or because he's becoming quite a big figurehead here.
I mean, he made the World Cup squad, so immediately the kind of interest goes up in him because of that. I think that, I think with him, I would agree with you. I think that he's been invaluable. And I think, JP, in terms of what you're saying about O'Reilly, I think O'Reilly, you're 100%. I think O'Reilly will go to the biggest club, of all those players that will potentially be sold on, because I'm telling you, if he could run a little bit quicker, I think O'Reilly would be playing for Man United. I think he's that good. I think he can do absolutely everything. And I think that, I actually have a friend of mine, and he works in recruitment for a club. And I think a lot of it now, JP, when players are being scouted, I don't think it's a case anymore of a guy will go with a kind of fedora, sit in the stand with a notepad and say, he had a good game, we could maybe take him. I think now there's so much analytics and formula that go into, this is our player that's playing in this position just now. Here's a player that's better, that's available, and, here's the facts supporting it. A friend of mine that works in recruitment told me that in Liverpool's algorithm, O'Reilly actually finished almost in the top 3 of everything in terms of what they look for of a player, apart from pace. So I think in terms of that, because of that, will he do at Liverpool? Probably not, because maybe the pace side of it is obviously massive in today's game. But there will be some big clubs that will look at that and say, right, well, in our game model, we can take him. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if O'Reilly was to go and end up being a top Premier League player or he could go anywhere. I just think he's that good.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, Jonathan. I think he's a tremendous talent. I really do. And we just found out as well, he's just turned 22, which is his birthday here today. So that is phenomenal. That's just absolutely frightening. I can't believe. I mean, to think he wasn't even first choice. Ange was trying to sign Riley McGree, and he ended up going to Middlesbrough. And it just so happened that they had this guy in Matt O'Reilly sitting waiting in the wings to sign on the dotted line. I just find it frightening that you're saying he was in the top 3 in England, and he's playing a year and a half ago. He's playing in League One. That's just, and we only paid £1.5 million for him. That to me is just recruitment that's the best recruitment at the highest level I can ever think of. Yeah,
and like I say, Mark Lawwell's came in, and Mark Lawwell's background is again very, very good, and with the City group, and he has a really good understanding of what the algorithms are for player recruitment at the highest level. So, Mark's obviously in there as well and working away and modernising that side of the club. So for me, Matt O'Reilly every 2 years in Celtic will be in a very, very good position 10 years from now, because they're guys that are going to go for big money. And yeah, as we say, it's nice to see kind of the club modernise, because I think even fans looking in now, there's much more of a patience with everything now as well. I mean that even from the point of view of, look, if Neil Lennon got beat, there was a reaction to that, and there was a reaction to that as well because, at times maybe the football wasn't, what fans wanted it to be, which is, their opinion. But I think with Ange, like, they'll maybe lose a game, they'll lose 3-0 to Real Madrid at home, but everybody's kind of going away from that game thinking, fucking, we were good there. We were good. Real Madrid are obviously one of the best clubs in the world, but we could have probably went in at half time 1-0 up, if not better. So I think it's I think there's a lot of things that come from that feel good factor at the club. Patience is one of them, which is great. There's obviously a modernisation with the B team, with the recruitment department and stuff like that. It's just, like I say, that had to happen at Celtic, and now that it is, it's clearly paying dividends, in my opinion.
Yeah, and obviously you touched on the patience element there, Jonathan. We lost 3 games out of our first 6 into the first season of Ange's reign, and there wasn't a cry for his head, or there wasn't, everybody could see the football he was trying to install straight away. This season's been a big frustration, as you know, obviously in the Champions League. Problem hasn't been actually defending this time. It's been more down to not being able to score goals and not being able to take our chances. What would you say, Jonathan, in terms of, obviously, your coaching now, but looking onto that, what would you say would be a way of maybe trying to rectify that? Because we've spoke at length, myself and Ryan and other friends of the podcast, etc., and we've said that guys are saying, Celtic need to go and pay that £10 million and buy a guy who is really good at scoring goals, like a top striker. And I'm saying to them, no, well, that's kind of no the model that Celtic have set themselves here. Celtic are setting themselves to, as you say, untapped markets, to go find a Kyogo or a Giakoumakis. I mean, Giakoumakis was the top scorer on the Everydays.
Yeah.
But yet, Daniel Malin went to Borussia Dortmund for over 50 million.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, and he comes to Celtic for 2.5. But again, you said it's all down to those kind of algorithms and things, and obviously Daniel Malin's a high-tempo type player. He's no like Giakoumakis, because when Giakoumakis plays for Celtic can't play front foot press. They need to sit into sort of mid-press, like off it a bit, because he's just clearly not as fast as Maeda or Kyogo. So what would you say in a way? Do you think it's down to lack of experience? Because other than Joe Hart, McGregor and James Forrest, as you mentioned earlier, they're the only 3 in that current Celtic side who do have Champions League football experience in the locker. The rest of them are all really novices to that level. Do you think it's down to that, or do you think it's just down to a development issue that those guys will become accustomed to eventually?
I think that I don't know. I think from a coaching point of view, like obviously, just if I was for instance looking at our 19s and we were looking or reflecting on a game that we'd played, and we maybe speak about the amount of times that we're able to get into the final third or the chance creation or whatever the case may be, and those numbers were high. You need to be happy with that to an extent, because what we need to understand as well, I think, as Celtic fans, is that Celtic aren't consistently a Champions League club anymore.
Yeah.
So if we're only seeing that level once every 5-6 years, it's very, very difficult to prepare the players for that. And I think, listen, I think Ange is you know, like we said earlier, eventually Celtic will be able to do that because Celtic play the same way now, regardless of who they play, you know. And I think that when you look at Celtic's numbers, you know, I think there's a couple of people on Twitter and things like that that do the analytics of the Celtic games. And if you look at Celtic's numbers are good. Celtic's numbers are good. And we're conceding goals at times that are a little bit naive for that level. But in terms of going forward, I think Celtic will be able to. We need extra quality, JP. There's no doubt about it. We need somebody that can just put the ball in the net. I think the amount of chances that we create and don't take, it's difficult. You know, it's difficult because at that level as well, you might only get 2 chances in a game. Yeah. And when you're not taking them, you're kind of a punching bag because you're just waiting on the other team being able to break in behind. And I honestly, it's an interesting one, JP, because I honestly don't know. I think that from a coaching point of view, if you were sitting and you were Ange or you were John Kennedy and you were looking back, I think there's so much of Celtic's performances that you would look at and say is positive.
Yeah.
And I think there's areas of improvement, and obviously being clinical, you know, and the kind of penalty areas is one of them, but actually getting the ball there, you know, is probably, I would hazard a guess that it's probably the most we've done since God knows when, but maybe Martin O'Neill, you know, and kind of those areas where you had top players. So I think that I think that they're just on the right track, mate. I just think that there's maybe a little lack of quality just now for that level, but I think it also comes from experience of just playing at that level.
Because for me, I do believe that, in my opinion, as a fan, Jonathan, this has been, I know Rodgers' first year was superb, guys like Sinclair, who for me, I still believe Sinclair's probably the biggest impact I've seen as a Celtic fan. When he came in, I just thought his quality, his pace, everything about him was phenomenal. I just think the signing for him was phenomenal. But in terms of the football, it's probably the best football I've seen. Obviously, I've grew up seeing Larsson and Sutton, etc. for Hartson. But in terms of the way we're playing, like you're saying, it's just to play the same way. Doesn't matter if it's Real Madrid or Ross County in the Cup or whatever. It's the exact same philosophy and the same play. Obviously, I was alive, obviously, when your dad was obviously with Celtic, but I can't really remember much at JP, obviously no more than me, but there's probably a lot of similarities in terms of the way they attack in football. It's just attack. Obviously, back then, your dad's team, Jonathan, the guys you had at his disposal up front was phenomenal, and how they didn't actually win more than they did, it still beggars belief with the quality of players they had. But in terms of, do you see any similarities for the both teams?
I think in terms of, I think Ange's team is probably eclipsing that now. You know, I think Ange's team is probably eclipsing that. I think that era when my dad was Celtic manager was just a difficult time in Celtic's history. You know, so I think we were talking about patience. And I think Celtic fans at that point could see that there was starting to turn, you know, in terms of the football that we were trying to play. The players that we were bringing in were probably a lot more in keeping with what Celtic is as an identity, you know, of go and attack, entertain. And I think Ange's team is starting to eclipse that because they're just so relentless. And I think that the criticism of my dad's team, although I would never have said it to his face, would be there was too many draws. There was too many draws, and there was just that. Ultimately, is probably what killed them. You know, when you talk about winning things, and how many times has Ange's team been in a position where they're drawing the game late on, and they'll come up with something. You know, they'll stick to what they're doing. They don't panic. They'll go. They'll play. They'll stick to their principles, and it pays off for them. And like I say, it's just Celtic now are when you set your alarm, you got to watch them. in America, you're like, brilliant. I can't wait to watch them play. I can't wait to watch them play, and I think that's probably the biggest compliment you could give them, is the fact that they're so entertaining that regardless of who they're playing, you're going to see proper football. And I just think that's what Celtic's all about. I just think that's what Celtic's all about. Just entertain, go and play, and regardless of who you're playing, try and play the same way. And I think the fans will back that. Fans get on board with that.
It's probably similar, JP, like Jonathan says. With Tommy's team, they had obviously that front three. Similar to Celtic, they've got a good front three. Doesn't matter who they play, if it's Jota, Maeda, Forrest. I've probably said in the past, Jonathan, I'm no Forrest's biggest fan in terms of the way this system. I think maybe he cycles a wee. I think he can still contribute, but I don't think he's going to be as effective as he has been in the past. But in terms of the two teams, JP, obviously Tommy's team to Angie's team, they've got an explosive front three. That's a main part of the system.
Yeah. Aye, absolutely. And Ryan, you know yourself, mate, we spoke a while ago about this, and I says to you, there isn't many teams for Celtic have got me really that excited, apart from Tommy's front three, which was, I remember Pierre Van Hooijdonk, Paolo Di Canio and George Cadet all playing like at the same time, and you just knew something was going to happen. Something magic was going to happen when they three were there. And then obviously the front three, when I see Jota, Abada and Kyogo all playing, something's going to happen. It's a butterfly feeling in your belly when you're at the game. And that's what it was like when Tommy was there as well, because it was just, in a way, Jonathan, I think your dad's team was relentless as well, because he tried to set up the same way in most games. As you said, it was just unfortunate at the time. We were being hindered in terms of finances and things that were happening at the club prior to your dad taking over, etc. But when your dad came in, I just found he lifted the whole place as well, just with the type of man he was, the way he spoke, the way he handled himself in front of the media. Things that were going on in the background, but he still kept that brave face on. He was excellent with everybody. He treated everybody the same way. He was just the type of man he was. But the football he got the team playing, and I'm talking about guys who you would probably say nowadays you would reckon they were bang average, And he still had them passing the ball. He still had them wanting the ball. Nobody was hiding. Everybody was wanting the ball. Angie's team's like that now as well. You've even got the goalkeeper playing out. Way back then, obviously, your dad didn't have Paquet playing out for the back, although he tried a couple of times, but he was he made a backside it a couple of times when he did try that. Your heart was in your mouth, but you kind get the gist of where I'm going with that. There's a lot of similarities with the two, I think, in terms of the two front threes. The most exciting front threes I remember seeing, probably. In between that, you've got to say Larsson, Sutton and Hartson, but that's for different reasons. But they're different type of players. But I'm talking about the sheer excitement of flair and ability, and it's definitely similar.
I think the similarities, JP, are probably just principles of play. Go forward, win the ball back, play forward. Don't pass the ball back the way if you don't have to. Look to make the run beyond the ball, to try and stretch the opposition and things like that. And I think the biggest difference will be that everything's a lot more deliberate now. So for instance, when you look at Angie's team, a lot of the kind of modern game now is one of those three centre midfielders just to kind of go into that wide area of the pitch. The wide player goes even higher, and then from that point, the opposition don't know what to do. Do you press? Do you sit in shape? And by the time you make your mind up, it's already bypassed that and you're gone anyway. And I think, I think tactically, if you look at Ange, he's very, very good. And I don't think that. I don't think football was like that in the 1990s. I think that obviously it's evolved and that's
Your dad didn't have the fullbacks coming in or anything, so that was a kind of...
No, just
that would have
just
been
keep
mental
Tosh out
watching. That would have been mental watching Tosh McKinley coming in after left, I think.
Well, exactly, but it's just I mean that just goes to show, like, it's like tactically, like, Ange is, has this very, very clear vision in his head of the way they want him to play, and I think that with my dad's teams, I think it was they're going to attack and they're going to entertain. I think what I would probably use to describe that team was freedom. I think they had the freedom to go and play and do what they wanted to do. I think with Ange there's a lot more in terms of what's expected from each position, each player, each phase of the game, and I think that I think that's natural. I think that's natural. 20 or 30 years passes. I think the natural thing is that it's going to evolve and be different. But I agree with what you're saying. But I think the similarities would be the principles of they want to attack, and they want to attack at every single point in the game they can.
Yeah,
I think as well. There's similarities in terms of the management as well, Jonathan. Because obviously when Celtic get beat or they don't put a good performance on, Ange's by going, that's not good enough for the fans, it's not good enough for the club. And I think your dad was the same. It was all about making the fans go home happy and entertainment. And again, it's kind of, again, obviously I wasn't really kind of, in terms of football and brain, I was only 6 or 7 at the time your dad was taking over, so I don't really know much in terms of that side. But in terms of when you obviously hear my dad talking and you hear stories of how they are kind of similar in that sense, and obviously with 2 managers, I think their principles are kind of the same as well, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think that I probably think my dad was maybe a bit more emotional than Ange, just knowing the way he was. I think that I think that Ange just understands. I don't think Ange is clearly very, very clever, and I think Ange understands the size of club it is, and what it means to a lot of people. And I think on the flip side, my dad was so so kind of entrenched in Celtic that it meant so much to him, probably too much to him, because I think that when you're in that position where you're so emotionally attached, it can sometimes cloud your judgment or decision making, because you just want to win and do well so much, and you end up chasing. And I think for Ange, he's very, very good at controlling the media. He's very, very good at controlling, I understand what the fans want and what's good enough and what's not good enough. But I also think that he's in that very, very good position where he's able to kind of take a step back and look at it objectively. And that's that. I mean, I can't imagine that would be an easy thing to do when you're a first team manager, because even at under 19 level at times, you find yourself at the side of the pitch watching the game, and there's a million things going through your head because you want to change it, you want to help the players, but at first team level with 60,000 people going nuts behind you or whatever the case may be, I can't even imagine what they guys go through. So I think with Ange, my dad, things like that, I think that if you have a good relationship with the media, for the most part, I think that it normally takes a different spin for you, because the media will then protect you a little bit. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer syndrome kind of comes into it. Right, yeah. Ole Gunnar's having an absolute nightmare, but Roy Keane and Neville and things like that are all of a sudden it's about the Glazers, or it's about the players, and it's about everything apart from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the media is a big part of it, and I think if the media like you, I think that you tend to get away with a little bit more. And I think both of those guys, Ange and my dad, I think both of them were able to keep a decent relationship with the media. I think that goes a long, long way.
Well, I think for me that's a big thing being a Celtic manager. I think is being kind of wiki with the media, because they try and, like you say, Jonathan, they try and catch you out, and ask you silly questions, and we all know that Ange was meant to be sat by Christmas, Gilles away by Christmas. It all comes hand in hand at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So, but I do believe JP Johnson is right in terms of the media side. Obviously, his dad was very good in the media, Ange good in the media. I think that's one thing to be a Celtic manager. I think you need to be good in the media. Lennon sometimes wasn't good in the media. Obviously, after games, Johnson's a coach himself. He might not, I don't know if Johnson deals with the media or anything like that, but sometimes they ask you questions after the game, and sometimes you need to be calm and professional and keep your head. And sometimes Lennon couldn't be that. It was just maybe similar to Tommy. He was enriched in Celtic because he played with Celtic. Yeah. He was involved as a manager. He probably was a Celtic fan now because of how emotional attached he was to the club through the years. So guys at Stratton, etc., they were very good in the media, very funny in the media. Like, they bother mate, same with Ange, always mate. As soon as you mention mate to the media, it's right, here we go, he's onto something here. So I do believe, JP, that's a massive thing with the Celtic managers being in control of the media, because some previous managers on the other side haven't been, i.e. Gerrard and Van Bronckhorst was very, for me, was a bit of a mouse to media. Just like, okay. But Ange challenged the media. I think that's very good, JP, in terms of the fans knowing that we've got a guy that's not going to be messed about.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Because you seen it in his first press conference when he was unveiled to the press at Celtic Park, and the guy was he was trying to imply that Ange had worked at a sort of lesser level than where he was being a Celtic manager. And by the way, Jonathan, you'll know yourself, there's not many bigger than Celtic in the world. So in terms of fan base and everything else, but he tried to imply that he worked at a lesser level, and Ange put the guy in his place straight away. And we could all see right away that, right, okay, this guy's not going to take any nonsense here. He more or less told the guy, he went, well, I don't know what you're trying to imply, but I've worked at World Cup level, I've worked at, I've won leagues all in the world apart from like here. So it's not as if I'm coming through the door here like a novice, and I don't know, I don't know what I'm doing. I've won trophies, I know what it's like to win. My job essentially all around the clubs I've worked with, I've all been kind of rebuilding the club. So, and he says, and it's not as if Celtic are in a different universe. He says, I know who they are, and I know what this club means to the supporters. And I used to, what was it he says, he had Kenny Dalglish posters on his wall when he was a wee boy. And said because his dad had him into football. Mm-hmm. So right away, that quirky wee reply, and Tommy was like that as well. And that's sometimes I think, if a guy's interviewing you and you have to be a bit of patter like that, eventually you put them on the back foot. And see, as soon as you do that, they kind of know then, right, we need to go about this a wee bit differently with this guy, because this guy's a bit more astute than maybe a guy who you would claim Ryan would be a yes man. Somebody that's going to go, yeah, sir, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. That's not what any of these guys are about. They're streetwise enough to know when somebody's trying to, be short with them or try to be smart with them and be clever with them. And you're bang on, Ryan. I think I thought the two of them, Ange as well, totally, the two of them are brilliant at it. And that's all part of them as a person as well. It all comes out in their personality. That's really important, I think, Jonathan. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think at the highest level, obviously, thankfully, that's not something that I ever need to do. But I think that at the highest level, it's got to be really difficult. It's got to be really difficult after a game that's not went well for you to come out 2 minutes after the game and then speak to the media about why it's not went well, because you need to decompress after the game. You probably want to watch it back yourself. You want to speak with your staff to kind of pick up what their thoughts are, and you're always kind of speaking out of emotion. I think that, when you look at, you mentioned there, like kind of the media when Ange first came, I just think that's, I just think that's kind of Scotland in a nutshell, right? I think it's one of those ones where you just, right, well, he's worked nowhere. So, let's just let's ask him what it's like to take this big step up in his career. And it's like, have a bit of respect for the guy that's, it's not as if he's been taking a U12 team at Ravenscraig and he's been handed a Celtic job, you know what I mean? Like, he's a national team manager, and I think that, you know, I think in terms of, was it a risk? 100% it was a risk, you know, because I think, like most people, I thought that Eddie Howe would have got the job or taken the job. And then when that didn't happen, and then Ange Postecoglou came in, I was exactly the same as everybody else. I was like, what is going on here? So it was a risk. It was a risk for Celtic. But Celtic clearly, you know, through their relationship with, you know, the City Group or whatever the case may be, or how that's, you know, how that's kind of all rolled out. I think they've basically came to the determination that this guy can change it for us, and is exactly what we need. And I think that, you know, I think every Celtic fan now is absolutely desperate for Celtic to just kind of give him a fucking 7-year contract or whatever he's got to do just to kind of keep him where he is, you know, because I think he's that important to us.
I actually found it astonishing, Jonathan, quite recent when he actually said that doesn't motivate him. The fact that the kind of long-term contract side of things and talking about money, and he said that's not what I'm about, and that's not where I've came from, and my background, etc. He said, as long as this club and these fans want me around, I'll be here. He says, and then maybe down the line we'll think about a new challenge. He says, but right now my thoughts are clearly here. He says, and that's all I'm going to say. And I would rather not be asked hundreds of questions every other kind of presser moving forward. And I thought that was astonishing, considering, like, I mean, you hear of these, you need to get the guy on a new contract, but to come out and actually say that was just frightening, I thought.
I think the whole contract side of it is interesting with a manager, because really, if a club wants you bad enough, you'll go anyway, you know, because they'll pay the money, and it doesn't matter if you've got 20 years left in your contract. If somebody comes in and they're willing to pay whatever that clause is to get you out of it, then that will happen. So I can understand, you know, I can understand what he's saying. I think that for most managers working at the top level, the length of contract side of it's more if they get sacked. You know what I mean? They get paid up. I think that's more what they're worried about, rather than the kind of job security. Because if you're going well, you know, everything's rosy. I think that it probably will only be a matter of time before somebody makes an approach for him. I don't think that he's going to do, you know, what maybe some previous managers have done, where it's a case of it's a mid-season gig. I do think that he strikes me as the type of person that would want to leave things, leave things in a good condition for whoever comes in. And listen, no, that's not to say that, you know, guys like Brendan Rodgers left it in a poor condition, because my God, I think he'd won about 11 trophies at that time when he left. So I don't think it was by any means a house fire when he left. But I think Ange would take pride in a kind of the body of work that he has, you know, and I don't think that he would want to leave anywhere with a kind of sour taste in his mouth, you know.
No, I agree. I definitely. I don't think he strikes us to be that guy. He seems all about loyalty, and I think JP Jonathan's right in terms of, I think managers want a long contract, because if they're sat there a big payday, like I think it was Aaron Padru got a 7-year deal or something at Newcastle, or 10-year deal or something. I think that was just, I don't know if that was me Ashley knowing he was going to go and just give him a bit of, there you go, mate, there's some money, cheerio.
That was astonishing, that deal, wasn't it? That 7 and a bit year contract he ended up getting in Newcastle at the time. That was frightening.
Aye, it's that was, what a time to be alive. Aye, a 7-year contract, and as I say, it's all nonsense anyway. You know, it's all nonsense, because ultimately there's a clause in there that if you're sacked, but you're getting £1 million. You know, you're not getting your 7 years or whatever the case may be. So it's like I say, you can put whatever length of time you want on there. You know what I mean? But it's with agents and everything else now. There's always a way out it for both parties. You know, I think you've seen that with Ronaldo in the last kind of week. You know, I'm sure he's working his ticket there for gross misconduct or whatever he's got to do to get out of that contract. you know, and I don't think his agent's an idiot. I think that, you know, you'll probably see Ronaldo get released from his contract and go and sign somewhere else. And
well, Ryan knows him anyway through the Jota side of things, you know what I mean?
Exactly, Ryan. So listen, you better comment on that, Ryan. For Mendes' side,
You'll be able to know that anyway with Mendes, mate, know what I mean?
I thought I was better than him, but he's taking my phone calls now, so I don't know. I don't know.
He's dealing with Ronaldo's case now, mate.
Aye. There's a lot going on with him.
Me and Jota are not big enough for that, carry on. Obviously as well, Jonathan, with Charlton Independent Soccer Club. You're also executive director in North American Scottish Coach Association. How did that come about, and what's that involving being a director? Is that overseeing a lot of things, or is that involved in other capacities?
A lot of volunteer work is probably the best way to put it, Ryan. So we have over 300 members, I think, which are Scottish coaches that are now working in North America, across the USA and Canada. So effectively, it was started by a guy called Eric McAleer, who is the president of it, and Eric asked me to get involved a few years ago. And basically what it kind of was, Ryan, was during kind of COVID and things like that, we set up some calls for the coaches because everybody was going nuts. So we set up some Zoom calls with, you know, we had Gordon Strachan, we had Walter Smith, we had Darren O'Day, we had all sorts of different presenters, and it was great because it just gave people something to look forward to, and it gave, you know, people something to do. And now, you know, kind of post-COVID, we have a big event coming up in Philadelphia this January that we're actually going to have a Scottish Coaches Day, and we have Jack Ross coming across to present at it. Tommy Wilson, Tommy Wilson was Academy Director at Rangers, but he was also the head of coach development at the SFA and things like that. So Tommy Wilson will be presenting at it. He's now the Academy Director at Philadelphia Union.
All right.
And we also have Greg Robertson, who was the recently just left Celtic as the under-18 manager. He's now living in Boston, working with a club there. So 3 guys that are going to come across and will be there. Philadelphia Union are going to host it for us, so it should be a brilliant day. But like I say, mate, there's it's effectively just volunteer work. There's nothing in it for us guys at all, apart from just kind of putting on events for guys to come and attend. But it's great. I mean, from my point of view, I've got to meet a lot of brilliant people through it. So that's kind of made it worthwhile on its own. And like I say, it's looking forward to this event in January. And after that, who knows what I'll get roped into after that.
I think obviously JP as well. I know Jonathan said it's volunteering side of things, but it must be a great experience as well to add on to your coaches as well to do that. And obviously, like Jonathan says, meet a lot of guys. Obviously, hear for guys like Jack Ross, who I do think is a top coach. I just don't think it's happened from yet in terms of Scotland. I don't think he's up to coaching Celtic or anything, but he's still coaching at a high level. And anytime we've seen his teams play, he's always tried to play football the right way. And I'd always respect managers who they might not always get the results. So sometimes as fans, you need to take a back step and just realise what they're trying to do, what they're trying to implement. And for me, Jack Ross, i.e. it is Dundee United or St Mirren, maybe a bit lower than Celtic, but at least he's trying things. Some managers, like we've said before, they just like to play safe, 4-4-2, just try and play, but he tries to take risks and it might not always pay off, but that would be a good listen as well, to be honest with you, JP.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack's got a bit of experience in his CV now. It's just unfortunate. Obviously, his last game in management in Scottish football is now probably going to go down in history as one of the highest scoring games ever in the league. But that's probably not what Jack's going to be remembered by overall in terms of in the coaching side of things. I would imagine Jack will go on and, you know, he'll have a good career doing whatever he wants to do. As Jonathan says, there's always opportunities for guys. You just got to broaden your horizons now and again. And coaches are always learning as well, right? It's an on the job. Every day's a school day, mate. You're always learning something new. You're always trying to better yourself in some sort of way. So I'm pretty sure Jack having a bit of time to reflect on, what he tried to do at United and how it didn't work. Because effectively every one of our heads were turned. See when they beat AZ Alkmaar in the first game, everybody was like, all right, here we go. When they got that result at Tannadice, everybody thought, right, here we go. They thought that was the Jack Ross kind of type of football that United were going to start playing, and he was going to implement his ideas and things were going to... And then you looked at his recruitment and you thought to yourself, outside the two Glasgow sides, I thought they, in my opinion, done the best business in the Scottish League. When you look at the calibre, they brought in guys like Craig Sibbald, Jamie McGrath, they brought him up for Wigan, Stephen Fletcher. They've still got Big Charlie Mulgrew. They re-signed, I think they got him permanently, they re-signed the boy Dylan Levitt.
He's actually with Wales, I'm sure he's with Wales World Cup.
He's part of that Wales squad that's now went to the World Cup. So he had a phenomenal, in my opinion, recruitment window. Where it went wrong from, I don't know, because obviously I wasn't on the training field with him every day, so I didn't see what sort of reaction he was getting for the players, etc. But I think it was just that run of results since, in my opinion, Ryan, I don't think they recovered for that, for the doing they got in Holland. I just don't think that the players, recovered mentally for that, Jonathan. And I think that was overall what kind of got them kind of out the door in the end, as it seemed.
I don't know him personally, JP. I did have him as one of my assessors on my UEFA licence, so I spent a few days with him. And what I will say is, I found him very, very knowledgeable. I thought he was a really, really nice guy. I thought he had a really nice way about him. And I thought he was the kind of guy that just commanded respect. I thought he was a presence, and I think those things, are kind of traits that you would hope to see in a really good coach or manager. I think you're dead on. Listen, he was very successful at St Mirren. I thought his St Mirren team were very, very good. He then gets a job at Sunderland, which, if you've seen the whole kind of Sunderland till I die, thing,
he's on that, right?
You know there was a lot going on there upstairs that you're trying to deal with as well, and I think you're dead on. I just think in management listen, I think sometimes you're better being lucky than good. I really do. I think you're spot on, JP. You lose 6-7-1, and then all of a sudden confidence is went from being unbelievably high to unbelievably fragile, and and then you play Celtic, who were just absolutely rampant on the day, and then it's difficult to survive two results like that in elite football, I think. But I agree with you. I don't think there's any smite on Jack Ross. I think that Celtic, to be honest with you, could show up and beat any team in the Scottish Premier League 9-0 on their day. I just think that at that point there was maybe some things going on that wasn't public or whatever the case may be, but there seemed to just be something that's maybe went awry. But he's clearly a top manager. He's clearly a top manager. He's clearly an unbelievable coach, and I think wherever he was to go next would be unbelievably lucky to have him.
Yeah, definitely. As I say, he's got a good bit of experience in his locker now as well. But no, that was quite interesting. Yeah, what about you, Ryan?
No, I do believe. I don't think he's up to Celtic level yet, but I do believe obviously Jonathan's obviously worked on him a wee bit there. Obviously, he's assessor. You hear about some of his training sessions are phenomenal. Players and his training's very good, and I do agree his recruitment at United was very good. It was between them and Hibs. I said might have finished fourth. I did say Hibs eventually. I thought they did a good window as well, but I do agree that he will go on and get a good job somewhere, maybe in Scotland or down south, etc. But overall, Jonathan, Celtic this year, what's been your main thoughts about Celtic this year? And obviously, New Rangers obviously no manager at the moment, so their ship's a wee bit rocked as well. So obviously, and next year as well, what would you expect for Celtic going forward?
I think it's going to be very, very difficult to catch Celtic, Ryan. I don't. The problem is now is if you are a rival club and you're looking to recruit a manager, you don't have a massive budget, I would suggest. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of it as well is how do you counteract that kind of style of football? Mm-hmm. You know, you almost need somebody that's going to be able to, you know, I think with Celtic are going to continue to enhance and bring in better players that are there. And I think Celtic are only going to develop a further understanding of the way Ange wants to play. So mm-hmm. I only think Celtic are going to get better because they're going to be recruiting players specifically for that system. Mm-hmm. And as we spoke about earlier, better than the players that are leaving in terms of, you know, their numbers or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I think for other teams in Scotland, it's just very, very difficult to kind of keep up with them. And I just, honestly, Ryan, I don't see who stops them. I don't see who stops them at this point. I would love to see Celtic being able to go into a Champions League or whatever the case may be and really make a go of it. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that would be the next big kind of hurdle for Celtic. Can you get back to that kind of maybe last 16? You know, something like that would be amazing for the club. Or even, you know, in the Europa League, you know, putting together a run and trying to get something positive out of that. But I think in terms of domestically, I think Celtic are miles ahead, and I can only see that kind of getting bigger.
I don't know if you're aware, Jonathan. You mentioned it earlier in this podcast. He says about Celtic going back to the Asian markets. It's been announced over the last couple of weeks now, and it's been coming back to the front of the queue and going away and coming back and going away and coming back to the media. But there's been several sources now in Japan and a Japanese journalist all confirmed that Celtic have actually signed a left centre back called Yuki Kobayashi from Wisla Kobe. Right. So obviously he's a left-footed centre back. In my opinion, it doesn't surprise me because obviously where Ange came from, he was a teammate of Kyogo's when he was at obviously Wisla Kobe, and I just think a left-sided centre back playing at Celtic now would just bring a remarkable amount of balance to the Celtic team now, instead of having to play maybe Starfelt, who's a right-footed centre back on the left side, or Big Jens on the right side, because that will also help Greg Taylor when he comes invertedly to receive the ball. When you've got a left footer giving him the ball and putting it exactly where he should, rather than putting it behind him or asking him to take an extra touch on the ball when he's trying to turn.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's obviously a massive part of it. Although it's maybe not hindered Celtic much domestically, I agree with you. I think if you want to go and play at the higher levels, I think that you do have to give a little bit more focus to things like how the pitch is balanced with left footers and right footers in certain positions, and I think that I think that, you know, the chances are that the lad's going to be very good on the ball as well, I would suggest, because, you know, we've all kind of seen players like, you know, Shane Duffy and things like that, who I don't think it was Shane Duffy's fault that it never worked him at Celtic. I just don't think Shane Duffy's a ball playing centre back, you know, and Celtic try to play him as that, and that's what we're talking about with recruitment. Like, it's more than just can you head the ball now. So clearly JP, this is a player that they've looked at, identified, and clearly he's somebody that they think brings balance, but is also able to handle the ball and have the passing ability that's required to play the centre-back position for Celtic now.
Yeah, and apparently he's 22 as well, so it would kind of fit the kind of model that Ange's brought to the team as well.
Yeah, fits the bill, comes in for a couple of years, move him on. Like I say, that doesn't surprise me at all that there's a player coming in from that market, because it's again, it's hard in the European market to get anybody in January.
Yeah.
And also, going forward yourself, Jonathan, what's any future plans? Is it just coaching and continue to go up the ladder?
Yeah, just Ryan, just keep trying to get better. Just keep trying to get better would be it. If like I say, I'm really, really happy with where I'm at just now, and love the environment that we're in, and the players are brilliant. So really, really happy just now. And like I say, I'm in no rush, Ryan. Just try and improve my coaching ability, try and improve what I can do to enhance the experience for the players. And like I say, hopefully the culmination of that is that you're able to keep climbing the ladder as well. But I'm, as I say, very fortunate to be where I am just now, and just keep grafting away and working, mate. And like I say, hopefully you're kind of blessed to get that opportunity down the road.
I think overall, JP, it's been great to talk to Jonathan again. Obviously, coaching in abroad and living abroad, it's always good for me anyway to hear stories like that, because it's something I've followed involved for the past, and coaching abroad and stuff. It's good to hear that, because I think it's an advantage in the sun as well. Coaching, you're not waking up, and sometimes it's freezing here, and most of the year it's cold here. So again, JP, anything before we end the show about Jonathan?
No. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure sitting here with you, having a chat, listening to your stories, listening to your journey, and sort of what's been happening for you, and then obviously your insights to what's going on with the hoops at the moment. So no, I can't think of anything at all that I'm sure if I do, I'll get Ryan to when he's not busy messaging Mendes, I'll get him to.
Aye, he's taking a day off. Aye.
He's got a day off, and he knows this Piers Morgan and Ronaldo thing quite. He's doing a bit. Then
Exactly.
Yeah, never known 10-year time. It's me and Jota and Mendes and Piers Morgan, by the way. Remember that one?
When I'm mad, you picture a floor sitting in Nando's.
Oh God, aye. Look at Jota, we shell shocked.
Definitely. Sitting there with a couple of legends.
But again, Jonathan, honestly, it's been brilliant to chat to you. If anybody likes the episode, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps the channel, it helps us get even better guests on the channel. Myself, JP, and Jonathan, we're on Twitter as well. I'm on Instagram, so is JP, and obviously the Twitter, the podcast on Twitter as well. Research the name and you'll get the podcast. But again, Jonathan, thanks for your time, mate, and good luck in the future. Hail, and take care.
Magic, lads. Thanks very much. Cheers. Pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.